Jonathan Majors is out as Kang. Brave New World taps a Moon Knight writer. James Gunn denounces meaningless cameos. Willy Wonka wins worldwide. And critics ravage Snyder's Rebel Moon. Plus, I'm in a child's bedroom. All of that and more on this week's Multiverse News.
You don't need to call the police, don't worry.
Yeah, please clarify.
Welcome to Multiverse News, your source for information about all your favorite fictional universes. My name is Matthew Carroll, and with me on the panel today to discuss so many big stories this week, we have Haley Hobbs. What's going on, Haley Hobbs?
Yeah, lots of stuff tonight. Let's get to it.
Yeah. Jay Sisson, how's it going, bud?
I'm sick, but it doesn't matter. I'm here. I'm ready to bring the news. Let's do it. I'm sick every week. It's just...
Every week now?
Yeah. Every week. Something new, something terrible.
You got an illness that lasts 4 Wednesdays. Only Wednesdays. Or Tuesdays. And Jay Scotty St. Clair, what's happening, Jay Scotty?
Hey, doing pretty well here. We've got a whole array of news stories to open up just like presents, so we should get right to it, right?
Absolutely. And let's do that by getting to Marvel Studios. Spokesperson confirms to HuffPost that Marvel Studios has parted ways with Kang the Conqueror actor Jonathan Majors following his highly publicized assault and harassment convictions. Majors has played Kang since 2021, and the character was poised to be the next big bad of the cinematic multiverse. Recent reports and writer additions suggest Marvel plans to stay the course with the upcoming Avengers Kang Dynasty still in development. We've had a lot of time to discuss recasting or character changes, but now that the shoe has officially and finally dropped, what actual fallout do we anticipate and how immediately?
Yeah, Marvel Studios has clearly been preparing for this for a while. They changed writers on the movie. They released this press statement like literally 20 minutes after the verdict came down. Like they had it in the drafts folder. They were just ready to send it right out. So they've clearly moved on. We've been talking about that for weeks, that we thought that they would ultimately, no matter how the case played out. To see the way that this came down, I had to put my legal hat on and try to read as much as I could to understand what exactly we're looking at here. We're looking at a case where Majors was found guilty on not all of the charges brought against him. He was, if you want to categorize them, apparently when you're talking about this sort of charge, you have what's called reckless, and then you have which is basically like sort of like non-intentional harm that you've caused to someone, but then you also have like an intentional harm that you've caused to someone. So the way that the case played out, he was found guilty on the reckless charge, and the 2 charges that were more, I guess you'd categorize them as intentional, were the ones that he was found not guilty on. So we've been talking about it, us 4, about when should we cover it, when should we not, because it seems like every week it was some texts were released and videos were released and all this type of stuff, and we just came to the conclusion that we would have the conversation now, like when it was over. And so getting to that, I mean, if we're looking ahead and we're asking how is this going to impact Major's career, I think it probably effectively ends it at this point. We know that obviously he's been dropped by Marvel. It does raise questions about, if you're thinking about the universe as a whole, what happens to Kang now. I think we talked about the Variety article a few weeks ago and talking about, well, they're totally screwed with the Kang stuff. I don't think that's the case. I mean, I think they wrapped up that story in a way with Loki, in a way that you could move on if you wanted to. My 2 cents on it, and I'd be interested to hear your all's take too, but my 2 cents is I don't know if recasting this character is the right move. It's a weird thing. It's a weird character to recast now, because it is a character that we lose sight sometimes. We think like he's in everything. He's really not. Most of his screen time in this universe has been on the small screen. It's been on Loki. He's appeared in 1 movie, a movie which did not do well, by the way. Like not a lot of people saw. And so when I'm thinking about that and I'm trying to look forward, I'm thinking about the fact that like we don't have actors lining up for these roles like they used to. It is harder to cast a superhero role now than it has been. We're seeing that in real time with Fantastic Four. And I think when you're pitching this to someone, it's like, do you want to play this character that's already been established, that was played by somebody else who was taken out in a very public way because of a domestic violence trial, and now you just got to step in and be the recast version? Like, that's not a good sell. And I think you will have a hard time getting someone to do this. Like, as weird as that sounds, like you want to think like, well, you want to be a Marvel villain. Like, I just don't think people are lining up like they used to try to take those roles. And I think you're going to have a hard time getting, like, you're not just going to plug in like a super high profile A-list actor. Like, people were already tweeting at John Boyega being like, hey, you should be Kang. And he immediately responded like, absolutely not. Like, I will not do that. Like, it's a headache. Like, no way. So I'm interested to hear what you guys think about that question, about the recasting, if you think they should or not, if you think they should move on. I'm of the mind that they should move on, that this is a character that you just have to take the loss on and move on from. That recasting makes it very messy for audiences to like, I mean, every time you see him on screen, it's like, you're like, yeah, that's the guy who was in the trial who now is not played by that person anymore. You know, like, I don't know, like, that's how I think I would react in the back of my mind. So yeah, messy situation, messy future ahead, and a lot of questions from Marvel Studios for sure.
I think it's actually the opposite. I think that, like, because of this definitive answer we finally have, if they stick to this, which it seems like this has been their plan, and I have a feeling that they were waiting on the conviction to be able to do this probably legally. They probably had probably clauses in the contract that were like they couldn't really announce their plans until this was actually official. And once the conviction dropped, like you said, 20 minutes later, they're ready. And I think that they have been in this messy place for so long because we're all waiting on this verdict, basically, and waiting to find out what's going to happen so that they can move on with the story. And I think now that this is over and they've cut ties and they're saying they're recasting, they're like, I think they're in a better and clearer place now than they have been, because now we all have something to look forward to. We all can look towards Kang Dynasty and be like, I don't know what they're going to do, but like, whenever MCU cast, every week we have these conversations, and it's been harder because there's not benchmarks. We don't know what the next thing is. And now we have things that are coming, and we can start talking again about like, okay, well, we know Kang Dynasty's coming, and what does that mean for this? And what does that mean for this story? How does this story connect to that story? And like, we can have these conversations that geeks like to have. And I don't know. I think it's a much stronger place to be in, just to have anything. I almost don't care if they recast or if they don't. I mean, I do, but like, I think it's better for them to have a decision made, basically. And if they're making that decision to recast, I think it's probably because they have really good plans for Kang Dynasty. And so I'm on board.
I've always felt that this is the point where Marvel has bitten off more than it can chew. To do Kang Dynasty and to say that you're also doing Secret Wars are in my mind, two really major events, and I'm not sure why they didn't just go with one or the other. It felt like Kang could have been, I mean, he was supposed to be, we think, the Thanos of this multiverse saga, right? And yet Secret Wars is a huge event in comics, and it could, if they just shift the focus to Secret Wars, we could write off Kang for now. Like, he could come back in the future, and we could let the character breathe a little bit and do that recast, and then maybe it loses some of that stank that's on it right now. But with Secret Wars, you could introduce not necessarily a villain, but a character that's got a lot of villainous traits in the Beyonder, which would be another huge, multiverse level threat that the Avengers would have to get together to fight. So it's always felt a little murky, those two storylines being announced in the same saga to me. So maybe, like we've been saying, maybe this is an okay thing for the storylines to take a step back, let it breathe. They're already back to calling Kang Dynasty Avengers 5. So I think they've already, like we've said, they've been planning for this. They probably have a little bit of a different direction in mind already, and I think that's okay.
Yeah, correct me if I'm wrong here, but I don't think Marvel has officially confirmed that recasting is their decision. I think the only comments they really made is that they've decided to drop Jonathan Majors. So I think the internet has just kind of ran with the fact that Michael Waldron, recently got attached to the Kang Dynasty, and we didn't get a title change. But even when we got that announcement, I said, I expect we're going to get a title change down the road. And Haley, I'm glad you brought up the fact that, I don't have an official source for this, but insider scoopers are kind of saying internally they've gone back to referring to it as Avengers 5 over the Kang Dynasty. So, Jay, I align with a lot of your takes on this in terms of recasting versus, just moving on. And I've seen a lot of great suggestions, everything from Denzel Washington to his son, John David Washington. I think that would be kind of cool if they did decide to go that direction. You could kind of play with, moving back and forth between time, but I do think it's very loaded boots to step into, so it wouldn't really be attractive to any actor. And yeah, Loki season 2 kind of tied a nice bow on things, and it's if there was a time to kind of move on from this character, it seems like now would be the time. And when I do think about, in retrospect, how Kang is going to land in the large, universe as a whole, it is a little bit of a shame that I will kind of compare him more to Ultron, where he's treated as a little bit more of a joke than the likes of Thanos. Thinking about the comics, Kang is a real threat, and he should be, treated with the same weight as someone like Thanos. But it is what it is. Marvel was kind of dealt a bad hand with this whole situation, but I feel kind of good about the way things have shaken out, and I still feel pretty optimistic about the future for Marvel.
All right. Well, up next, no stranger to social media, DCU figurehead James Gunn took to Threads to share some insights and clear up confusion regarding the many casting announcements surrounding his upcoming Superman legacy. To paraphrase, the filmmaker suggested that pointless cameo porn had contributed to superhero fatigue and defended his cast of characters as the opposite, saying that they are all included in the story for a reason, rather than seconds-long Easter egg appearances. Additionally, Gunn alluded to a meeting with his recently cast Lex Luthor, Nicholas Hoult, hinting how their vision of the character would be new and unforgettable. That's a lot of talk from old Jimmy Gunn. Do we think it's just that, big talk, or something more substantial we can dissect?
Good old James, he never hangs us out to dry when it comes to something to talk about. And when I first read this, my mind is still kind of programmed to think of James Gunn with Marvel. And I was like, what is he talking about? And then I thought, he's probably really talking about the DCEU and some of the movies that have been coming out in the later stages of the DCEU, like The Flash, where we had George Clooney coming out this week and saying, yeah, that was a total one-off. I'm never ever gonna be doing that again. I don't think anybody wants that. It's not like the calls were ringing my phone off the hook or anything like that to be Batman again. So I think that he's trying to set a standard for his DCU, that he's not going to be flippant with his cameos or his Easter eggs. And we know from his work on the Guardians franchise that he's very intentional with the things that he does, even if maybe they don't end up turning out the way he might have wanted them to. I'm thinking of Adam Warlock. That character caught a lot of flack this year for being not very consequential, but Gunn introduced him back in the second movie. I liked it, but that's beside the point. So I do think he's actually being, this is one of the more strategic things we've seen come from his social media talk. And I think the temperature on Nicholas Hoult as Lex Luthor seems lukewarm, but I feel like that's just DC fans doing DC fans things.
I love anytime people are talking about a Lex Luthor casting, they just pick the angry bald guy. Who's the angry bald guy in Hollywood? Bryan Cranston. It's got to be a bald guy that's been angry on screen. It's we can think bigger than this.
Yeah, I think these comments made a lot of sense, actually. Thinking about all the casting announcements we've gotten for Superman Legacy, I look back to the comics and thinking about Maxwell Lord, who Sean Gunn was recently cast as. Maxwell Lord started out as just that. He was a supporting character that was there in and out through each issue and went on to have a larger story. So I do think, he's kind of it's some veiled shade at maybe, some of the DCEU movies, like you mentioned, The Flash. There, I also think about a lot of the appearances Wonder Woman made in The Flash, as well as Shazam. And I even think back to some of Zack Snyder's film, even the extended cut of the Justice League or even Joss Whedon's version, like that moment with the Green Lantern ring was great, but in the great scheme of things, it was just that. It was just a one moment to be like, oh, that's cool, and then no impact outside of that. So I do like these statements. I think it is a little bit of a case of headlines sensationalizing his comments a little bit, and I think once you get the context behind them, he's learning slowly but surely to be a little bit more measured with some of his statements. Fingers crossed. Yes, we'll see.
I don't know. I like having a show every week, though. So if he wants to keep going, like, let's do this.
Sure.
He listens, so
I was literally thinking that, like, how often are we just going to talk about whatever James Gunn said this week? You know what I mean? He does. He says something every week.
We need to make it like a weekly bit. Like, this week in James Gunn's Corner.
James Gunn news. Yeah. It's like we talk about our different universes, Marvel, Star Wars, DC, but this isn't really, it's just James Gunn. Just James Gunn's little corner of the universe. I do think...
James Gunn's been firing off at the mouth again. Future headline.
So, yep, for sure. I do think this bodes well if he means these things, but it is just like talk, so we'll see. I will say, like, given his like experience in like Suicide Squad, like sure all those characters have a purpose, but not like a real one. Like, they're there to make you laugh or they're there to do something, but like a lot of times his characters, I mean, sure, Suicide Squad's a specific case because it's the Suicide Squad and you're losing them throughout. But I'm just thinking about his DC appearance up until now, and like there are definitely a lot of characters that mean nothing. So like, I don't know, to the overarching story anyway. Let's take a quick break, and we're going to be right back with lots more news. Stick around. We got a Wonka talk. Oh, yeah. Wonka corner, baby. All that right after this.
no escape.
Yeah, we're going to talk about Wonka, and you're going to like it. Don't you dare hit the 30-second skip button.
I would like to see the retention data for those parts of the show.
Welcome back to Multiverse News, everybody. Let's move on to our next story. Instead of chocolate, here at the show, we're eating crow because Wonka defied our expectations and won the box office, as well as won over audiences worldwide in its opening weekend. The Paul King-directed-Timothee Chalamet-starring holiday tentpole musical prequel danced to the domestic #1 spot to the tune of $39 million, contributing to its $151 million global haul. How are we feeling about the unexpected singing start for Wonka and its ability to satisfy sweet teeth as we head into the holiday weekend?
I wanted to tackle this story because I did see Wonka, and I went in with the lowest of expectations, probably my least anticipated movie of the holiday season. And, I have to say, it won me over. It charmed me. Did it have any substance whatsoever? Not really, but it worked. It was pleasant to watch. It had some catchy tunes. Timothée Chalamet, I will say, like the trailer didn't do him any favors. They kind of isolated the most awkward lines and kind of put them in there. And do I see him as Gene Wilder? No, I don't. But I think the movie does enough to kind of differentiate itself from that 1971 film while also paying a lot of homage to it. And it does work. And this is a career high for Paul King, director. This is his highest opening weekend, and it's the third highest opening weekend for Timothée Chalamet. So I think, 2023 has been quite a year for movies, but as we kind of enter the end here, it seems like it's hitting a little bit of a slump, especially with Aquaman. So I think Wonka's going to really benefit, and as families are kind of thinking about like, what movie are we going to go see this holiday, season? I think Wonka's going to kind of come first to mind because it plays it safe. It doesn't do anything super dangerous or challenging, and it's just really pleasant and saccharine. And will I remember it next year? Maybe not, but right now I enjoyed it.
I think the takeaway is we said, who is this movie for? And it's just was clearly not us.
I think it's interesting that all these holiday movies are all Warner Brothers. Like Wonka, The Color Purple, and Aquaman are all Warner Brothers. They're just like, you know what? We're going to have the #1 box office movie over the holiday weekend. Like, no one's going to get in our way. It's just us v. us. But
that's weird.
But yeah, I think this is a good start. I think it's going to have some solid weekends. It got an A- cinema score, which is really good. Like that's right there with like big tentpole movies that people go out and see on the second and third and weekends. And when I'm thinking Christmas, I'm kind of thinking like, if you're thinking, it's not a Christmas movie, but if you're thinking, hey, we want to go to the theater for sort of a Christmas kind of thing, that's probably the one that you're going to choose. So I think we will see some solid few weekends from it here. I think it'll continue to grow, and it seems to be very popular overseas, and you would only expect that would continue.
Mm-hmm. We're going to talk about it here in the lightning round in a few minutes, so stick around. But Aquaman is having more and more reasons not to go see it. It feels like in the ways that we've discussed. And so like it being a challenger for this, because it comes out this weekend, correct?
It does, yeah.
So I think as a challenger, it's kind of weak. And it being a holiday weekend, going to see movies with families, that's a big day. A lot of people go on Christmas or Christmas Eve to go as a family to the movies. And so I think Wonka has a much better chance of maybe even, I don't know, man. I know I'm on the other side of this bet, but I think another bet could be, will Aquaman take down Wonka as the number one movie? Because I really don't know.
I mean, is anyone going to take that bet at this point in the game, though?
Nose goes.
Yeah. I mean, like, because generally, if a new movie's just going to do better, like, generally, the new movie takes it regardless, almost. But this week, I really don't know if Aquaman has what it takes to take Wonka down. I think it's going to be really interesting to see.
Yeah.
It's Jason Momoa versus Chalamet Bing Bong, and who's going to win? Probably Chalamet.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I mean, there's still a lot of people who want to see a DC movie. I want to see them both.
I'm going to see it.
I'm seeing it too. I've got my tickets.
I'm going to see it too.
Well, you guys have fun with that. You guys will have a great time.
We'll all send you pictures, Jay.
The main reason I'm seeing is because I want to see you, eat a Ghost Reaper.
All right, up next, critics' reviews for Zack Snyder's Rebel Moon Part 1, A Child of Fire, oh lord, these titles, have hit the internet ahead of its December 21st Netflix debut, and the consensus has been overwhelmingly negative. The film currently holds a 26% approval rating on Rotten Tomatoes. Snyder and his films have often been subjects in the emerging conversation surrounding the seeming divide between critics and audiences, and the director has already announced a director's cut with close to an hour of extra content. What, if any, impact do these reviews have on our own anticipation of Rebel Moon Part 1, Fire Lady, or whatever, or Part 2 for that matter?
I think the simulation that we live in is getting a little lazy in already queuing up a Snyder director's cut. Like, it's a little too on the nose.
Is Zack Snyder the robot? Is he the AI?
Like, people are going to be banging the table like, we want the Snyder cut of Rebel Moon Part 1, and then we want the Snyder cut of Rebel Moon Part 2. It's like, this is just going to be a thing with Zack Snyder movies, I guess, at this point. But, like...
He's already announced a 3-hour director's cut of Part 2.
Like, I think Snyder movies are they're so unique culturally and critically speaking, because it seems that people who review movies at these levels for publications and in the media just do not like Zack Snyder movies. Like, it just seems like that's kind of the view across the board. He is going to be him in the movies that he makes. I was reading descriptions of this movie, and it's like lots of slow motion, lots of like, all this type of stuff that we've come to know Zack Snyder for seems to show up in this movie. And I think that if you aren't into that, if you're not into his style, you're probably going to not just not like this, you're probably going to hate this. Like, you're probably going to just be annoyed the entire time. It does not seem like it draws people in who are in the middle. I will say that the marketing campaign for the movie, I feel like, has been very good. I feel like the trailers look good and they're all over TV, and I feel like Netflix has done a good job to try to convince people to watch it. I am still very interested in seeing it. I've read within the mess of negative reviews, I have found other people who have come away quite liking it and feeling like it does set up a really interesting part 2, but that the movie does feel like Zack Snyder literally made like a 5-hour movie and then just took a razor blade and just cut it down the middle and made it part 1 and part 2, and that's what it feels like at the end of this movie. So I'm not psyched about that, but still I am interested in seeing it, and we'll see. You know, I'm just gonna kind of hold the cards and listen to watch this for myself and see what happens on the other end.
I hate the name of the second one, which is The Scar Giver.
I also hate that. There are Zack Snyder movies I've really enjoyed, you know, really, really, but like I can't get away from, there's a YouTuber named Patrick H. Willem who I recommend a lot of his videos, really, really wonderful, but he made a video that's like Zack Snyder, our himbo auteur. I think it's just called the Zack Snyder video, but in the thumbnail, he's doing this and like holding his arms up and it says our himbo auteur. And it's just breaking down his movies and how like they are flashy with no substance. Like literally like this movie is about this, but if you look at the substance of the movie, it doesn't, none of the themes are supported. None of the things, it's just like, and I just can't unsee that video. Like, and I just always think about that whenever I think about Zack Snyder and his overall like thing. He's great at making iconography. He's just a wonderful, like, flashy director, but like it's like he doesn't, there's nothing under the surface, it feels like. And it's almost so nothing under the surface that you can like write your own thing under the surface. And I know a lot of people who love his movies and are always talking about how meaningful they are, and I just never see it. I'm like, I don't see that. I don't see that that take. But anyway, check out that Patrick H. Willem video.
I actually have checked out a couple of Patrick H. Willem videos recently at your recommendation here, Matt. I watched, The Death of Cinema, and then I think I also watched, he did one recently about how Ryan Reynolds and The Rock have like transcended like the age of the movie star to become like more like brand figureheads, and like that's their whole, it's really interesting stuff. He's a really good video essayist, but I actually, in my recommendations, I've been seeing, Zack Snyder, our himbo auteur. So I'm glad you mentioned that, because if you didn't, I was going to, and I'm looking forward to watching it, but I haven't yet. But these reviews, they do kind of like knee-jerk reaction. They confirm some of my worst fears. It's kind of a laundry list of Zack Snyder's repeat offenses, and it does sound like it's a case of style over substance. And for me, I don't. It doesn't dissuade me from still wanting to see this movie. Like, I'm going to check this movie out and make my own opinion, or at least give it a try. And it just makes me think about like Zack Snyder and his body of work. And I really do think he's just best served when he's adapting material rather than doing his own thing. And even though this is very heavily influenced by Star Wars and originated as a pitch for, Rogue One, it just kind of seems like the consensus is more in line with like what he did with Sucker Punch, where it's just like, characters that are doing cool things on screen, but you really just don't care at all. So, the jury's still out on this one, and I still will check it out, but maybe going in with some measured expectations and some reservations.
Yeah. All right. Well, up next, let's hit the Spotify poll. I thought this was an interesting question, just because I assumed what the answer would be, but it's nice to see it confirmed. The question was, do you like to look at leaks or try to avoid them? And we had Gimme Them Leaks got 9%. And Save the Surprises, Please got 90%. So yeah, I think that's what I would expect from our audience. Because I think that's how we feel. Like, I want to hear the news, but I don't like when it's just like leaks that are. Yeah, I like when the company rolls things out properly.
I don't want to watch a movie and feel like I'm like going down a checklist. Like, saw that. Mm-hmm. Oh, this didn't show up that I saw a leak of, or whatever. Like,
yes,
I want to watch a movie.
Hate that. Hate that.
For those that voted that they do want the leaks, I'm not going to tell you you're wrong, but it just puts the burden of responsibility on you. You can enjoy those leaks, just don't propagate them, don't spread them. Just enjoy them in isolation, please.
Keep your leaks to yourself.
Quarantine yourself.
Some men just want to watch the world burn.
So true. So true. All right, we have a lot more to talk about after the ad break. So much in the lightning round that could have even been main stories. So we'll try to keep this one tight, but you know us, probably won't. Lightning round right after this. Welcome back to Multiverse News. Before we dive into the lightning round, let's just throw out, if you like this show, if you find value in it, and you'd like an ad-free version that you can get directly into many of the podcatchers, you can actually insert your Patreon feed to. You can go to patreon.com/Multiverse Newscast and sign up for the Patreon. It's $4 a month, and it supports this show. It keeps us going. We appreciate all of those over there doing that. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And I heard there was a contest this week.
Yeah, we had a special giveaway just for the patrons, not for any outsiders. So if you want special giveaways, special polls, maybe you can be part of the show. Like next week's show, you'll hear, you can have your name shouted out and your thoughts read out. So yeah, join us over there.
Sweet, sweet. Well, yeah. So again, patreon.com/Multiverse Newscast, and go join, and keep the show coming. All right, lightning round. This is the part where I'm going to read a story, and you can claim that story by shouting out your name, and that story becomes your story to give your take on, and everyone gets one rebuttal for the extent of the lightning round. Here we go. Deadline is reporting that Marvel Studios has tapped Moon Knight series writer Matthew Orton to take a crack at rewriting Captain America Brave New World. According to these reports, Orton's rewrite will add new material to previous iterations of the script, including a treatment completed by Falcon and Winter Soldier showrunner Malcolm Spellman, with the new sequences to be filmed during the production's extensive reworks.
Haley, I think this didn't screen super well, so they're taking some major steps to remedy that, which, even though we're sad we only get one MCU movie next year, at least they're working on the future projects.
Yeah, 100%. Poor Things star Christopher Abbott is set to replace Ryan Gosling in the upcoming Wolfman film from Blumhouse and Universal. The Wolfman will be directed by Lee Whannell of Invisible Man fame and will release October 25th, 2024.
Scotty? Yeah, this is an interesting one. It makes me think back around like 2016, 2017 when Universal kind of like, jumped the gate and announced their Universal universe of monsters, and they kind of had to dial things back with the poor reception to that Mummy movie with Tom Cruise. But I like what I'm hearing. The Invisible Man was a really great film that kind of came out in the midst of the pandemic and ended up being like a really strong hit in terms of like early access and people actually paying full price to like stream a movie at home, and the buzz was just really good. So in terms of Ryan Gosling, I imagine this was like a scheduling conflict. From what I hear, he's still going to be credited as a producer and is still involved in the process. So I think Ryan Gosling's a great talent, and if he is kind of signed off on this transition, it just bodes really well. So I'll look forward to it. And knowing that we're getting it in less than a year, that kind of surprised me that they're going to be able to kind of pivot and make it happen that quickly. But they seem confident in their ability to do it, so I'll look forward to it.
Two-time Emmy-winning actor Andre Braugher passed away last Monday after a brief illness. Braugher, 61 at the time of his passing, built a career on playing police officers, notably starring in Brooklyn Nine-Nine as Captain Raymond Holt.
Jay, I don't know if you've watched Brooklyn Nine-Nine. It is hilarious. It's a great comedy. It's a great show, and Brower is so good in it. Like, he has some of the best timed lines. He was on like Law and Order a number of times over the years as a reoccurring character. So, rest in peace to him. He's going to be remembered for a lot of these great roles that he's brought across these different shows. So, really, really sad to see that news so suddenly.
Scotty with a rebuttal. And I say this not to make light of his passing. I say this with the utmost respect, but I just want to give a heartfelt 9-9. If you know, you know.
Yeah, I want to throw out that, this one hit me hard. 61 is young, and it sounds like it was, as we read, is after a brief illness, so like sounded sort of unexpected. I'm really bummed out by this. He was like the life of that show, as understated as his character could be. It really gave the show a lot of interest and life, and really, really sad to hear of his passing. So yes, rest in peace. Hideo Kojima is partnering with A24 to develop a live-action film adaptation for his 2019 video game Death Stranding, which starred Norman Reedus, Mads Mikkelsen, and Guillermo del Toro.
Scotty. Yeah. Most people probably know Hideo Kojima for his development of the Metal Gear Solid series, but Death Stranding was kind of it's one of the first productions he's done on his own as a solo developer here. So I think I have not played Death Stranding myself, but I saw the trailer. I've seen some gameplay. It seems like it's really, really out there. Like you see Norman Reedus like cradling like a newborn infant that seems to be attached to him with like some kind of artificial umbilical cord, and like Mads Mikkelsen pops up. Yeah, Guillermo del Toro. So I think A24 seems like the perfect partner for this adaptation, and it seems like video games are kind of on the rise in terms of like the new, superhero genre. We've kind of talked about like what is the next big thing going to be, and I think video game adaptations are certainly making a case for themselves.
For sure. While speaking with Entertainment Tonight to promote Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom, star Jason Momoa admitted it was unlikely that he'd portray the King of Atlantis again in any future films. Matt. What are you doing, Jason? What are you doing? You're breaking ranks too early, bud.
It's even worse than I thought it would be. Like I thought he would be teasing. I thought James would be out there teasing. No way, baby. They're like, this is it.
No, and that's the thing. We've criticized them teasing, like possibly, who knows? But just saying, like, no, I'm done. This movie goes nowhere after this. And I mean, if you're gonna do that, at least say like, come out real strong with like, this is the end of my character. This is like the strong ending. But I don't think they knew that when they wrote this movie. So like, it's not probably a strong swan song. It's probably like another outing in a series that's going to go nowhere.
Tiny bet, they've branded the most random things to publicize this film. Like I keep finding them and sending them to Jay, like aluminum water bottles. And I'm like, is this 2008? What are you doing?
Save the oceans.
Yeah, save the oceans, which like, right. But I mean, it's rough. And like my Regal app today was like, get your souvenir popcorn and cup. And I was like, no.
I can't remember if we talked about it, but there was an article like a couple of weeks ago, and I can't remember who he was talking to, but he basically talked about his future in the DCEU, and he was like, oh yeah, over there at Warner Brothers, they really like me. And I was just kind of thinking, well, I don't think so, not so much now. Like, I think everybody kind of knows this movie's not going to do great, but you're like actively tanking it now. Like, not a good look.
People who've early screened this movie have said that there is a post-credit scene too, so I just am fascinated to know, like, what could you possibly have left to say?
Well, we'll all text you what it is when we see it, Jay.
HBO announced that Curb Your Enthusiasm's 12th season will be its final, consisting of 10 episodes and premiering February 4th.
Jay? Yeah, I mean, Larry David's played this character in some form for 25 years at this point, and he expressed the sentiment of wanting to close that up and move on to other things and not necessarily be known as, like, TV's Larry David, or whatever for the rest of his life. But yeah, encouraging to hear that it will have this conclusion, right? That it'll come to a point where the conclusion is in mind with the last season. But that's a legacy character there that's coming to a close. When you think about the overall connection of that character, it's a lot bigger than just Curb Your Enthusiasm.
Mm-hmm. All right. Per a Bloomberg report detailing the status of Netflix, the streaming platform is developing expansions of its most successful franchises with spin-offs of Extraction, Peaky Blinders, Wednesday, and several other currently in the works.
Haley? I don't really know. It seems like the opposite of what the people say they want, right? We want the standalone things. We want the more signature IPs.
No, we're in our franchise
but
era.
Netflix is doing the opposite.
Yeah, people say they want that, but then they go to see the franchises still. Like, I mean, not to the level they used to, but it's still, when you have a franchise, you have at least a built-in audience. I mean, you still, the rules of franchises still apply. I just think that, like, I think we are taking a little bit of a slide back from the mega franchises, but I think that still recognizable IP still has value, I guess. I don't know.
I know Margot Robbie asked Cillian Murphy if he would do Peaky Blinders again, and he said yes. So maybe that was just kicking this whole thing off.
Okay.
I was wondering how much of an impact that Squid Game, like the real Squid Game, like that has apparently been pretty popular. So I'm wondering how much that has like motivated their decision to kind of double down on expansions.
A Squid Game was just such a cultural crazy moment, and like then they even had YouTubers who did. I think it was Mr. Beast. Didn't Mr. Beast do a real life Squid Games before they actually did it on Netflix?
I wouldn't be surprised. Yeah, I don't know for a fact that he did, but it doesn't surprise me at all. Yeah.
So I think that like it's just it's a cultural moment. People are going to watch things related to it. I know my niece loves Squid Game, as dark as that is. She was not in my custody when she watched it. I can't be blamed.
I'm assuming we're going to get a spinoff of every character of the Addams Family at this point. Like, it's happening.
I was just going to ask if your niece watched the dubbed or the subbed version of Squid Game, because that's the real crime. If she'd watched the dubbed version, because I watched like 5 seconds of that and I was like, nope, subtitles.
I think I watched the dubbed version.
Oh,
it's not that I mind a subtitled show. It just depends on what I'm doing. Like if I'm really giving it focus, or if I need to kind of like be able to look away and like not focus as hard. Sure. And I think I watched Squid Game in sort of that mode.
Sure.
Adult Swim released the first look at Rick and Morty, the anime. The spin-off series will debut sometime in 2024 on Adult Swim and Max.
Jay, what's interesting about this, which I didn't, I guess, realize, is that it will be in Japanese, speaking of dub-overs, with English subtitles, which I was taken aback by. I did wrap up, Rick and Morty just wrapped up its 7th season this past Sunday. I did watch that last episode last night, and I felt like this season was very strong overall. And so to deviate from that and go to a new show, especially one that is going to feel very, very different. Like even in this short little 30-second look, like Rick and Summer screaming at each other in Japanese, and like it's just like I was like, that's going to be a hard pivot in the franchise. So that's interesting because there's a lot going on there.
Yeah, for sure. Weird choice for a spinoff.
Yeah.
Prime has renewed the fantasy comedy series Good Omens, based on the book by Neil Gaiman, which stars David Tennant and Michael Sheen for the 3rd and final season. Matt, I love this show. Love it. But I did find the 2nd season to be a bit of a dip in quality, and I think that show operated so well in the 1st season because of how it knew it had an end point. Like it began with the end in mind. And I don't know if you guys have been watching it, but the 2nd season feels a little villain of the weeky, and in a way that like I think lost a lot for the show. So the fact that this is a 3rd and final season is really encouraging to me, because I think this show is a show that needs finality. It needs like the scope to be cosmic, and I'm excited for the 3rd and final season. Really wonderful show. If you haven't seen it, Good Omens is awesome. A24 released the first official trailer for Alex Garland's action epic Civil War. The film, set in the near future, revolves around the U.S. amid a violent civil war and hits theaters on April 26th.
Scotty, yeah. I have made a reputation for myself as the resident A24 guy, but this was an instance where this felt a little too real. When I saw this, I was like, this feels a little too timely. I don't know if I want to see this. And it kind of reminded me of another film we got a couple of years ago called The Hunt. But I think The Hunt was just much more obviously like a satire, and it wore that on its sleeve. And I think it was a little more palatable for that sense. That being said, depending on how they decide to tackle the nuance, like this is obviously some conversations that need to be had. And I hope, they don't instigate, more volatility. But Alex Garland, I think he's a really interesting filmmaker. I loved his first film with Ex Machina. I liked Annihilation a lot. His recent one, Men, left something to be desired. Very, very strange 3rd act there. But if anybody could kind of sell me on this concept, I do think he's an interesting choice. And I will be checking this one out eventually in April of next year.
Tiny Butt. The one thing I thought was strange about the trailer, when I saw it, I felt the same as you. I was like, this feels a little too close to home, a little too real. I don't know if I could sit through this. It's nerve-wracking. But in our current world, the things people are talking about, the dividing lines, people are talking about a civil war possibly straight breaking out, are kind of that right-left divide. And in the trailer, they mention that the union that has broken off, one of the unions is like Texas and California,
Right.
which I thought was a really weird decision. And they show a flag with 2 stars on it, and they're like, Texas and California are one of the factions, and it's like those are it almost feels like I'm wondering how directly they're going to take on the ideas that are happening in our world today.
Yeah, I mean, California is certainly known for its, liberal sensibilities. But as a person that lives in California, I think a lot of people would be surprised once you get removed from the major cities and get more into the desert. Like that Texas sentiment is, I won't say the entire Texas sentiment, but that you know what I'm trying to say here. That certain political bend is a little more common than you might think.
The politics are very different in the rural
Yeah,
areas.
Yeah,
for sure. I've heard that a long time. And maybe that's what they're going with. It's like maybe some sort of attack happens and they take out the cities or something, whatever.
I mean, you can say that for most major cities, and then rural outlying places in
that's
this
fair.
country.
Exactly.
That tends to be the
that's fair.
sentiment. And I've seen articles that are like, if you want to truly affect change, depending on what you believe in, then you want to actually go to those rural, smaller towns and cities in our country. It's very interesting.
Yeah.
Amazon and the Tolkien estate have won a legal battle against the author Demetrius Polychron, who claimed that the streaming series Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power, had infringed on his book, The Fellowship of the King. That feels infringy itself. Sorry.
Well, the courts would agree with you.
The California judge dismissed Polychron's lawsuit, granted a permanent injunction against him, and ordered him to pay $134,637 in attorney's fees to both Amazon and Tolkien's estate, deeming his copyright claim unreasonable and frivolous from the beginning.
Haley, this guy's crazy. He really said, I'm going to take on Amazon and the Tolkien estate and win. And that obviously wasn't the case. And I love, too, that he tried to pitch these as sequels. So The Fellowship of the King, and then his next one was going to be The Two Trees.
Oh.
I'm so glad we
This
got to talk
man
about
wrote
that.
fan fiction of Lord of the Rings, and then he had the audacity to say, you are stepping on my fan fiction of your work, and now he owes 6 figures.
Oh,
Dude,
yeah, that's
great.
painful. That is painful. Oh,
Yeah.
It's great.
Tiny, but Demetrius Polychron, like that has to be a pseudonym, right?
oh,
He's
has to be.
100% a robot, right?
This is another simulation. The simulation is so lazy now. Like this is lazy. This is lazy
another
writing.
example.
Definitely an AI bot that wrote weird fan fiction. This is interesting too. I feel like this is at least a world where people can understand a little better. I hear all the time my musician friends, when we're like riding in the van, we'll be talking about, oh, did you hear about the lawsuit that this song is based on this song? And like, there's a lawsuit about it. And it's so much harder for the layman who's making these decisions, and like juries are trying to make these decisions. And it's like, no, it just has a 4/4 beat, or like it has this chord progression, but that chord progression is in 1,000 songs. It's so hard to, it's harder to do. And in stories, I feel like at least it's a little easier to be like, oh yeah, your book's called Fellowship of the King, man. Come on.
I just get a kick out of these people who think they're going to take on these giants. Like, there's a theme park apparently in I think Utah called Evermore, and they tried to sue Taylor Swift, and it was like, really? You want to go down that road with the most probably powerful woman on the planet? And of course she countersued because one of their volunteers was like, they perform your songs without license.
Yeah.
I don't know. It just
She's got
I get a
agents
tickle out
everywhere.
of this kind of thing.
There's a guy known as the Florida Joker who's been trying to sue Rockstar all week because of the GTA 6 trailer. And it's like, if Lindsay Lohan wasn't successful back 10 years ago when GTA 5 came out, what makes you think you're going to have a leg to stand on here?
Yeah.
Hey, but they can try.
They can try.
I hate the idea that it is that if they're the more powerful person always wins, but that is pretty true with, you get the most powerful, you get the more expensive lawyers are normally the ones who are going to win. But I do hate that, but also when it's as frivolous as this, it's
Right.
like, it's no longer
hate,
punching down.
that, but when it's like you put no thought to this, and now you're gonna try to,
Yeah. Paramount debuted the first look at John Krasinski's upcoming film If, which explores the concept of abandoned imaginary friends and features a star-studded cast including Ryan Reynolds, Emily Blunt, and Steve Carell. The fantasy comedy is set to hit theaters on May 17th, 2024.
Scotty? Yeah, I'd heard about this film and saw the concept on paper, and it, was kind of one of my most highly anticipated for 2024. And I liked the trailer, but I wanted to love it, and I just felt like something kind of wasn't clicking for me. And I think Steve Carell as the voice for this imaginary creature, like it really feels like a Pixar film come to life. Like I kind of got Inside Out brought to live action kind of vibes, which that all really worked for me. But I do think the kind of weak link here might be Ryan Reynolds, and he's serviceable in the role, but I think this might have been an opportunity to give somebody else like an up and comer like a chance to dabble in a really fun and ridiculous world. But we'll see. A lot of great talent attached to this one.
Haley's like, are we shit talking Ryan Reynolds? Like,
hey, I'm
get
just
me
here.
in.
I'm just here so I don't get fined. Okay.
I like Ryan Reynolds for the most part, but I understand why people don't. And like I said last week, I do think he's a little bit of a one-note actor, but he's still really likable. So.
For sure.
That one note, though.
Yeah,
It's a note. Plays that note beautifully. FX has renewed comedy series What We Do in the Shadows for a 6th and final season.
Scotty? Yeah, this feels right. This is a show that I've really enjoyed. We actually covered it on Pandavision for a few seasons, but I think just like our general reception and excitement to the show as it's gone on, like it's kind of waning. It's losing a little bit of the magic. So I think this just kind of feels like, the right time. Let them go out on a high note, say what they want to say, and let's just remember the show fondly before it has gone on for way too long.
James Gunn has verified that Matt Reeves is not only extending the Batman universe, but is also creating a DC universe series called the Arkham series. The confirmation came in response to a fan inquiry on social media about Reeves' involvement in the broader DC universe, alongside his work on the Batman 2.
Jay, this I was saving.
With the weight of the world on his shoulders, he
that was
said.
such a heavy Jay. Jay.
This is so dumb that like I felt like I had heard it wrong. That it was so dumb. Like I was like, there's no way that I read what I thought I just read, which is that someone asked James Gunn, "Hey, the guy Matt Reeves that directed the Batman? What else is he working on with the Batman?" Which we have always been told since the beginning exists as its own thing. Own thing. Nothing touches it. Matt Reeves is in charge, okay? And it's his vision and whatever. And James Gunn comes back and goes, well, yeah, he's doing the Batman Part 2. He's doing the Penguin. All of these have to do in that universe. And then somebody else followed up with like, wasn't he supposed to be doing an Arkham series in that same universe? And James Gunn goes, oh, he's doing an Arkham series, but it's for the DCU. So it's like... so you've already started taking these things and you're already going to start crossing the wires. We're going to bring in, that is so confusing. Like I'm already confused on how is the tone going to match up? Is it going to be like, we're going to develop all these villains over here for Robert Pattinson, and we're going to develop all these villains over here for whoever is Batman in the DCU? And I'm just like, I can't believe that he said that, because, and it's not that he said it, it's just that that's the reality, is that he's that's ours, that's DCU. I'm just like, please call me whenever you're releasing something. Like I'm so, I don't know. It's just I don't get this, and it makes it just. Do you want to connect it or not? Like just tell me. It almost feels like James Gunn is making a power play. Like he's like, we're gonna get Pattinson in the DCU. You just wait, Matt. Like we're getting him in. But in a wider sense, I feel like, I don't know, like, is this just him not being able to tell people no to stuff? Like, like, is this what happens when you put a creative person in charge and you put a suit on him and you're like, you're the boss now? Like, he says yes to everybody? Like, I don't know. But this is weird and confusing, and I'm out.
Never stop.
We went from last few weeks. We've been saying like he really just needs to run these things by a PR person before he sends them out, and now Jay is personally volunteering. Please just call me. Just call me. I will advise you on how dumb the thing you're going to say is. Oh, we should just always save the James Gunn stories for last. Just
this was a very James Gunn heavy episode.
Yeah, it was
very heavy.
Sponsor us, James.
I'm not. I'm not crapping on you here, James, but just I don't know. Maybe get off Threads for a little bit. Just delete the app. You don't have to delete your account. Just maybe delete your app from your phone. Or that way you're on it less or something.
It's just terrible because he's made some of my favorite content in the last many years, and I still am just like, everything he says, it sounds so dumb and makes me want to see things less, and I hate that. Oh, man. Okay, well, that's the show. That's the news that we have for today. Let's run around and tell everybody where we can find you online. Haley Hobbs.
Yep, you can find me at Source Pages. We don't really have much coming out this month of December because just other stuff going on, I guess. But we did read some What If comics, and I will say along the lines of What If, I think they're going to do that Marvel 1602 run, so that's something fun to read if you haven't, and that's also written by Neil Gaiman.
Sweet. And Jay Sisson, where can they find you online, bud?
Yeah, you can get me at Commute the Podcast. Me and my co-host Dave like to talk about interesting things in about 20 minutes or so. So we usually cover about 3 on an episode. So come check us out, Commute the Podcast, anywhere you get podcasts.
Awesome. And Jay Scotty St. Clair.
Animation Deliberation is the place to find me. It's the podcast that takes action, animation, and cartoons seriously, but not too seriously. Yeah, so all this mention of What If Season 2, we're certainly excited for it and looking forward to breaking it down.
Awesome. Yeah, we are as well. Marvel Cinematic Universe Podcast will be covering What If, and I'm still kind of waiting to try to figure out exactly when we're dropping what and everything, but we are going to drop every day something, even if it's me solo, but hopefully Jeff and Jay Scotty, and if you guys are free, feel free to join me. Like, I'm probably going to need some co-hosts for those days.
Yeah,
so
I'll be around.
Jay and I are going to be on winter break soon.
I got like 2.5 days. 1.5 days.
Yeah, man. Thursday, that's it.
I'm struggling.
Oof. All right. Well, we'll be back. We hope you do well, Jay.
I'm going to beat it, and then I'm going to get another one next time. So it's fine. 2 things are inevitable on this podcast. We're going to talk about James Gunn, and I'm going to be sick.
Of talking about James Gunn.
Yep. All right. We'll be back soon, guys. Peace.
You stay classy, Multiverse.